So if you wouldn't mind, it would be wonderful to hear from you, and then I can appreciate and welcome folks after that.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to acknowledge all the faculty, Dr. Smith, who's going to be speaking. I see Dr. Clark, I see Effie and Dr. Roy and Dr. K, I should say, and Dr. Wang, Dr. Asaki. So just so happy to see the department in great numbers here. Dr. Ranka, I see you. And so happy to see you all. And I just want to just begin. So John F. Kennedy starts and says, we must find time to stop and thank people who make a difference in our lives. So as Ms. Mackey stated, I'm Dr. Hill, and I'm the chair and associate professor in the Department of Social Work and Behavioral Sciences here. And again, I want to thank Laura Mackey and our faculty who saw the value of having this remote supervisor appreciation event to applaud and salute social work supervisors and administrators for their dedicated in commitment and service to society, your agency, the commitment and care and guidance you provide to our MSW students. I'd be remiss if I didn't also say hello to Shiona Douglas, who's Assistant Director of Field Work, and also Jackie LaHoulier. She just keeps the ball rolling and the glue that pulls it all together. So thank you, Ms. LaHoulier. So as I continue, I just want to say this unprecedented global coronavirus pandemic has increased the level of fear, stress, anxiety, grief, and death in our world. As you already know, social workers have historically been able to bear witness to the challenges, hardships, trauma, and oppression of individuals, families, and societal ills. Historically, social workers have provided services to the most vulnerable members of society, included abused and neglected children, domestic violence survivors, cancer patients, elderly clients, students, all facing abuse and neglect, as well as end-of-life situations, those with debilitating mental health conditions, those impacted by poverty, violence, trauma, and joblessness. Social workers hear and process situations that confound the general public with experiences that are hard to imagine and comprehend. When I was in direct practice, people wouldn't believe me and say, you must be making this up. This couldn't be true. As a social worker, I'm sure you often hear people say, I could never do your job. Another frequently asked question posed is, how do you deal with and cope with all the pain and misery you hear from others as a social worker? So people not in the profession have difficulty comprehending the intensity and the complexity of the daily challenges that social workers experience every single day. And on top of this, add in the challenges of dealing with the pandemic of COVID-19, but also the pandemic of 1619. These terms of quarantine, social distancing, which should be named physical distancing, shelter in place. Now we know more about Pfizer and Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccines, are terms that weren't widely topics of conversation as we began the year 2020. So I just want to say thank you for your essential service in ensuring that our students and families, that they have access to food and resources and emotional support, helping families and individuals process and heal from trauma and oppression and meet their obligations. I personally want to applaud you as social workers for conducting telehealth sessions, having virtual sessions, providing comfort, decreasing isolation, nurturing family connection and bonds. Your ability to instill hope and maintain warm and supportive, caring relationships is admirable. There will be a renewed emphasis for social workers to continue this noble work that you have done historically. As a profession, we need to pivot and be innovative in advocating for the collective responsibility of our government to provide a safe and nurturing environment that supports the academic, economic, developmental, and social emotional well-being and needs of all individuals in our society. Everyone deserves to have someone in their life that can be supportive, build caring and trusting relationships, provide hope and resources, and someone to promote healing, growth, and talk to in times of need. And I just want to pause and say thank you for being that someone. During this global pandemic, you are more essential than ever before. A heartfelt thanks for your service, your compassion, your commitment, and your dedication to your clients, to your agencies, and your noble efforts in training the next generation of social workers. I just want to close by reading a quote by Michelle Obama, and she says, "You may not always have a comfortable life, and you will not always be able to solve all of the world's problems at once, but don't ever underestimate the importance you can have, because history has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own. On behalf of the Springfield College and Department of Social Work, thank you, thank you, thank you."
Thank you so much, Dr. Hill. That was truly beautiful, moving. I don't know that any words I could say would capture, how wonderful that really was. And I think you touched on so many of the points that we would want to convey to everyone, and how grateful we are for the work that you all have done this year in this time that has posed new opportunities and new challenges. And that's an understatement for sure. One of the things I'm thinking is this is a year of making it work more than any. And one of our supervisors of the year that we would like to acknowledge needs to attend a meeting at 9:15. So I wanted to make sure there was time to acknowledge her specifically. So I'd like to skip ahead on one of the things I was going to do and acknowledge Laura Davidson. So we have 3 field supervisors of the year that we'll be acknowledging this year. And Laura Davidson is a social worker at Amistad Achievement First in Hamden, Connecticut. I asked students and faculty to provide quotes about the supervisors that they'd worked with. And so I'd like to share a couple of quotes about Laura that students had shared with me about working with her. One student said that Laura has provided guidance, compassion, and challenged my thinking as a social worker. She has allowed me to learn from mistakes, pushed me to challenge myself, and demonstrates the love, dedication, and compassion for the profession that I wish to possess. She eased my fears working with kids through the pandemic, provided me with the essentials I need for practice to improve my intervention skills. Working with her has been a pleasure, and I'm glad we chose to work together. Another student said, Laura has a wealth of knowledge and experience. She is compassionate about serving the children and families at Amistad. It has been a blessing to have learned from her. So each of our field supervisors of the year is going to receive a clock that's engraved as an award along with a certificate of appreciation. So you'll get this in the mail soon. So I'm hoping we can take a moment to acknowledge Laura, and not to put you on the spot, but if there's anything you want to say, I want to give you your moment.
Well, I'm a little emotional right now, actually. I've been a field supervisor for several years. This is only my 2nd year supervising Springfield students, and it has been a real joy and pleasure. And I really appreciate this acknowledgement. I obviously don't do it for the acknowledgement. I'm so honored to be able to be part of their journey as social workers. So my seniors are graduating soon. My interns are going off into the world. This is very exciting. So thank you all for this time and this recognition, and the time of the clock. That's going to be great too. But yeah, I feel so proud to be part of this profession. So glad to be part of the many people, including the folks on this call, who raise up our next social work generations. And I love working with my students and their families. It brings real joy to my life. So I feel so glad that I was telling someone recently that when I was in college, I thought I was going to go into education policy and be someone who worked at the State House and, craft ideas. And then I went and taught, and I worked with one of the social workers at the school in Oakland, California, where I taught. And I thought, how do I do this? And my students there and the opportunity to work with the social worker there really changed my life. And I'm so glad and so blessed that it did. So thank you, everybody. And congratulations to the others who are being acknowledged today.
Thank you so much, Laura. And I personally would like to express my gratitude. I've never been able to see you before today, which is a unique dynamic specific to the year of the pandemic, but we've communicated many times. And, my heart goes out to everybody working in schools, such as yourself, working, in hospice, working with elderly populations, working in hospitals. But in particular, there were a few times I reached out to you about taking additional students, and I thought, you might think I'm out of my mind, and yet you approached everything with an open mind and a how to do it attitude, and I really appreciate that. And to me, it was really embodying social work too, and the importance of the connection and how we can't do the work that we do without every single one of you. So I'd like to now acknowledge our next award recipient, just to keep going with that. And that is Rainey Gould. So when I asked for quotes about Rainey, let me just get to my slide. One faculty member said, "I found her to be incredibly responsive, student-focused, knowledgeable, organized, and flexible, yet able to provide needed structure for the student to feel safe and supported. Rainey is able to assess the student's ability and talents and knows how to best support the student in pushing beyond their comfort zone to learn not only new skill sets, but to gain confidence and a sense of high achievement. We are lucky to have Rainey as one of our field supervisors." And Rainey is also a school social worker at the John F. Kennedy Academy Middle School in Springfield, Massachusetts, and works with students that are involved in our Springfield AmeriCorps program. A student said of their work with Rainey that Rainey Gould is an outstanding, thoughtful, knowledgeable, empathetic field supervisor who provides unwavering support and guidance. And another student said, "She is such an inspiration. Her ability to complete a task, support us as interns and students. Rainey is well-rounded. I'm even considering going back next year as I feel like I can learn so much more from her. I'm grateful for being able to intern with such a wonderful woman." So if we can take a moment to acknowledge Rainey, who will also be receiving one of these plaques. And Rainey, is there anything that you might want to share? I know that you also said there might be some things coming up at school today, so I don't know if you've been pulled in another direction. I hope not.
No, I'm here. Thank you. So far, it's quiet. No, no. First, I just want to say thank you. It's quite humbling first to receive, an email saying that you are being awarded, but it's also quite another thing to hear what your interns have to say about you. I've been doing this for quite some time now, and every year I look forward to it. I look forward to working with an amazing, group of, up and coming professionals in this field. And it's not always what I can give them, it's also what they give me. It goes both ways. And I'm very honest, and I tell them that I learned so much about myself as a social worker by doing this, by supervising students. It's been an incredible experience, and that's why I keep doing it. So thank you all.
Thank you so much. And it's nice to meet you as well again, too.
Same here.
And our last but absolutely not least award recipient is Monique Edwards. And Monique is a program director at the Center for Human Development. And we are also so proud to say that Monique is a graduate of our program. She has also been a much appreciated person that I've been able to reach out this year and sort of pitch new ideas and check in about, the possibility of taking more students. And she's also just kind of run with it. And I will forever be indebted to her for that. And you've just been quite lovely to work with. So a student said about working with Monique that it was a pleasure having you as a field supervisor. I have learned a lot from you. You're a great example to students like me, and I hope to accomplish what you have. And a faculty member said, we have been so lucky to have Monique working with a number of our students, and it has been a pleasure to witness Monique's growth from student to practitioner to leader. So if we could all acknowledge Monique, who will also be getting one of these awards. And Monique, if there was anything you wanted to share and in the time of acknowledging you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'm truly honored. It was also very humbling and, to see that I was being awarded. It was fun. It was a good ride. And I remember what it was like being a student. And I'm actually happy that I have the opportunity to do what my field supervisors did for me, for these students. Yeah, I remember doing the CIFI training and they were saying, as field supervisors, you're considered the gatekeepers of this profession. And it's truly an honor to be considered a gatekeeper of this wonderful profession. And anything with Springfield College, I remember what it was like as a student. It was great. It's still great working with you guys. You, Laura, thank you for being so flexible, the professors. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Monique. We appreciate you. And to all of our award recipients for the year. One thing I'd like to extend to everybody is I hope that this time next year we can all come together for an appreciation breakfast, which is the history and the legacy that happens at Springfield. And while we have adapted this year to the Zoom format, I really hope to look forward to us all coming together and sharing a meal and a continued appreciation next year. So I just want to extend my heartfelt appreciation to you as the Director of Field Education. I stepped into this role in the early stages of the pandemic and initially thought, how the heck am I going to pull this off? Placing students, figuring out remote internships, making sure that everybody is safe and getting the level of care and support that they need. And so the thing I'm struck by is not only the professionalism, the education, all of the training and work opportunities that our students have gotten, but really the fact that we have entrusted our students in your care and you have done incredible work with them and supported them in this time when, they needed that extra level of support and guidance. We're so honored to have each and every one of you be an extension of the education that we provide. Many of you have probably heard before that field education is considered the signature pedagogy of social work education. And it's really the place in which students are able to bring together all of the knowledge and skills that they're learning in the field and prepare themselves for the next step of their work professionally. And we absolutely could not do that without you, as the field supervisors, the field instructors out there, kind of on the ground with our students. So I just want to express appreciation and hope to get to meet each and every one of you next year. Dr. Hill was so kind to introduce my other colleagues as well, but I also want to give them a shout out to folks who may not know some of our newer staff. Jackie LaHoulier is our administrative associate and helps everything, stay together, keep running. So you'll often hear from her, either from her directly or on behalf of the Office of Field Education. And Shayona Douglas is our Assistant Director of Field Education as well. And we'll be working more so closely with folks in Connecticut. So those of you who are located in Connecticut, you will have the pleasure of also getting to know Shiona moving forward. So I also have the honor of introducing Dr. Rhoda Smith, who is going to be doing our presentation today for CEUs. I have provided the Google form links in the chat for folks to be able to fill out to get CEUs. We will need both an evaluation and the form just for CEU registration and to get you the certificates, which you'll have an option to have them mailed to you or sent by email. And if there's ever questions or concerns about that, feel free to reach out to Jackie and myself. So just to share a little bit about Dr. Rhoda Smith, who I am completely honored to call a colleague, and she is a huge supporter of field education. So her, as well as the other faculty here today, I will always be indebted to them as well for their support of the field education program. So Dr. Rhoda Smith is going to be speaking to us about cultural considerations and student success in field. But just to share a little bit more with you about her background, she received her Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from California State University in Fullerton. She then worked for Orange County General Services Agency, the Child Abuse Services team, while pursuing her MSW at the University of Southern California, during which time she worked in juvenile probation. After obtaining her MSW, she worked at Patton State Hospital. After recognizing the impact of childhood trauma, abuse, and neglect on the adult population that she was working with at Patton State Hospital, her interests turned to child welfare, and she began working in child protective services. She has worked for more than 25 years in child welfare as a supervisor, recruiter, trainer, curriculum writer, and consultant for CPS in California. As a doctoral student, Rhoda taught social work courses at the master and bachelor's levels. Additionally, just one moment. She was selected as a minority fellow through a Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration grant, which provided additional training and education regarding services to address mental health and substance abuse issues. She served as a site director and trainer for the Riverside Training Center for the Public Welfare Training Academy under the San Diego State University Research Foundation's Academy for Professional Excellence. She has also served as a Title IV field faculty at California State University, San Bernardino, supervising MSW interns in field placement. She served as the inaugural program coordinator for Azusa Pacific University and the University of Consortium for Children and Families in Los Angeles. In 2016, she relocated to New England to serve as the Bertha Capon Reynolds Predoctoral Fellow at Smith College, a residential fellowship which culminated with her teaching in the Smith College MSW program. She received her PhD in social policy and social work from Loma Linda University in June 2017. Her dissertation research, which focused on sexual and reproductive health policy and services, earned her a Research Excellence Award. She was later invited to join a national collaborative on researchers studying issues affecting pregnant and parenting foster youth. She was also honored to join the faculty and as an assistant professor in the School of Social Work at Springfield College. Within the past 2 years, she has presented information from research on pregnant and parenting foster youth at several national conferences. She has recently co-authored, along with Dr. Monica Faulkner, a curriculum for foster parents in New York for the administration of services to children entitled Coaching Young Parents in Care, and participated in the development of the EPY Toolkit, sponsored and supported by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. So we are grateful to have Dr. Smith with us today. She can speak for herself in many wonderful ways, but one of the things I want to say is we look forward to involving you in the conversation today, and the next component of having you together with us. So thank you so much, Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Laura, for that introduction. I can do all of that, but I can never get myself off mute in time to teach my classes. So I always start every class on mute. And I just wanted to reiterate what's already been said here by others. As the signature pedagogy, you are how our work gets done, right? We provide a lot of academic book knowledge to the students, but until they can actually come into the field, what we're doing does not come together for them. So we want to take a moment and also appreciate you and your resilience and support of our program and our students through the pandemic. It was nothing short of amazing how you were able to pivot. And I think that motto of pivoting is more valuable than anything that we could have taught. So again, we cannot thank you enough. I also want to acknowledge all of you as my esteemed colleagues here. I'm humbled to be able to come before you today to just have a conversation, as Laura has alluded to, some of the things that I think it's very easy in the midst of a global pandemic to lose sight of. So for many of you, this is just a review. If we have new field supervisors, maybe it's something you haven't heard yet, but I'm sure you'll hear it down the line as we all continue to work together. So again, welcome and thank you for sharing your morning with us. I'm really sorry that we don't have real breakfast. Like that used to make it so much better when we all got to sit together and eat and talk and chat and catch up. As we start, I kind of just want to set a context for the conversation today, which is, again, as my gardeners start outside the window here, I hope it's not too disturbing. I use these guiding principles for teaching throughout the pandemic. I have not had I didn't have the wherewithal or the initiative to create these guiding principles. I borrowed them from someone. So I'm going to acknowledge my colleague who I borrowed them from, who probably also borrowed them from someone. So Dr. Nadine Finnegan-Carr is one of my co-investigators on a research project right now. And she was generous enough to share this with me, that none of us signed up for this. And as many of you have leaned in and shown, that the humane option is the best option. We cannot just do the same thing online. It requires some tweaking, some creativity, some patience. We will foster intellectual nourishment, social connection, and personal accommodation, as social workers would do. And we'll also remain flexible and adjust to the situation. So hopefully this kind of guides our conversation today. I wanted to remind you all, I'm sure you've all seen this ad nauseum, of the NASW Code of Ethics. I'm not going to get into the whole Code of Ethics with you. This is just some of the stuff in the preamble that I think applies to our talk today. That the primary mission of our profession is to enhance human well-being and help meet the basic needs of all people, with particular attention to the needs and empowerment of people who are vulnerable, oppressed, and living in poverty. We are sensitive to cultural and ethnic diversity and strive to end discrimination, oppression, poverty, and other forms of social injustice. These activities may be in the form of direct practice, community organizing, supervision, consultation, administration, advocacy, social and political action, policy development, implementation, education, research, and evaluation. Social worker decisions and actions should be consistent with the spirit as well as the letter of the code. And then I want to remind you of our values: service, social justice, dignity and worth of people, importance of human relationships, integrity, and competence. Now, I was also shocked as I combed through the code to find out that there is an out clause in the code. And maybe some of you are aware of it. I just decided I was going to read the fine print for once in my life, especially since the new code came out in 2018 that had amendments to it. And basically it says the NASW Code of Ethics is to be used by NASW and by individuals, agencies, organizations, and bodies such as licensing and regulatory boards, professional liability insurance providers, courts of law, agency boards of directors, government agencies, and other professional groups that choose to adopt it or use it as a frame of reference. So I didn't know that choice thing was in there. I've been teaching it to my students wrong all this time, telling them that this is what governs our work, always. So it's interesting, and I think it'll be a good point of discussion as we go forward. I'm gonna steal some thunder from my chair, Dr. Hill, the esteemed Dr. Hill, and ask that someone monitor the chat, because I won't be able to see it while I'm doing the presentation. So if someone could do that, that would be great. We are going to have some discussion coming up real soon here. So the learning objectives for today, again, I want to just reintroduce the role of culture and field placement, discuss ways to create safe cultural spaces and supervision, introduce ways to facilitate cultural conversations, generate ideas for modeling cultural humility and highlighting issues of cultural competence, and describe practice opportunities for cultural growth and expression. Now, by I, when I say I want to have these as the learning objectives, I really mean you, right? You are holding on to the best ideas because you are the people that are doing this work all of the time. So those learning objectives are what you're going to share with us. Now I'm going to stop sharing for a minute just so that I can reshare, because I don't know how to go share to share. So I'm going to reshare and show you a couple of short clips. One clip is probably 1.5 minutes. The other clip is 3 minutes. So I would ask your patience to watch the clips. Let's see if I can get them up here. So let's see. Whoops. I believe this is the first one. Maybe this is the second one. Okay. Okay. Gonna pause that one because that's.
Are you seriously considering her as a candidate?
Don't.
She's a woman. She's a woman. This is a man's job. She's clearly not educated.
Does she even speak English?
That's not me. I'm not like that. You call it an honest mistake. Science calls it a blind spot. Our unconscious mind is a mysterious and powerful thing. It makes 90% of our decisions without us even knowing it. Our brains are overloaded with 11 million pieces of information every second. Yet we can only process about 40 of them. So we're wired to make cognitive shortcuts, using past experiences to make assumptions. And you know what happens when we assume? Our unconscious mind can put us on autopilot, determining where we sit, who we eat lunch with, who we turn to for advice, and who we choose to offer a helping hand. Living our lives with blind spots can put us in a tunnel. Same point of view, same decisions, same outcomes. We can find ourselves trapped in the land of snap judgments and misconceptions. We've all been on both the giving and receiving end of blind spots. Think about it. Who's talented? Who's able? Who can I trust? Who belongs? We've all been there. Blind spots are part of the human condition. Our choices have consequences for us and the people we interact with. By accepting that blind spots exist, we can stop. Imagine what possibilities exist if we could do it all over again. Different perspectives, inclusive relationships, diverse networks, better outcomes, seeing people for who they really are. People like you, with unlimited potential. We all have blind spots. Once you accept that you have them, you can choose to do something about it. It's time to check your blind spots and focus on what's possible.
Darn it. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. So here comes the second clip.
Jerry.
Excuse me?
Hi, sorry I'm late.
Who are you?
I'm Donna Chang.
What do you mean?
I mean, I'm Donna Chang.
You're Donna Chang?
Did you think I was Chinese?
Oh, no. What, you mean because of the Chang?
Actually, the family name wasn't originally Chang.
I didn't think so.
It used to be Changstein. You must be Estelle.
Yes. Who are you?
I'm Donna Chang.
You're not Chinese. You're not Chinese?
No,
I thought you were Chinese.
from Long Island.
Long Island? I thought I was getting advice from a Chinese woman.
I'm sorry.
Well, then that changes everything. She's not Chinese. I was duped. So what?
She's still getting advice. What's the difference if she's not Chinese?
I'm not taking advice from some girl from Long Island.
Wait a minute. Now you're getting a divorce because she's from Long Island? You want a divorce? You got one. You know, you might want to think about changing your name.
Okay, so let's start our first discussion. What did you get or see in either of these clips that resonate with you right now? Like, what are you feeling? What's coming up?
I want to say that if it wasn't so funny, it would be really sad. You know what I mean? It's a comedy, of course, and they did it in fun. But the reality of it and what we live with every day is like, you know, that's exactly what happens. Yeah. So thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Great. I appreciate that. Is it Zaida?
Yep. Saida or Zeta, whichever
Okay.
way you want to.
Zeta. Okay.
Don't call me
Fantastic.
for dinner. I say. Thank
All right.
you. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. What came up for anyone else?
Oh,
Anne?
yes. So my thought is that it wasn't funny.
Mm.
In fact, that in that era, that Seinfeld era, there was humor in it. And I don't know if you say we've come a long way, but it was embarrassing to have a dialogue like that based on a name. And I'm not sure if that could be done again on a TV show because of the insensitivity of it and what it implied.
Excellent. Anyone else? Thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
I think for me, it goes back to the original video, the assumptions video. And I know that I was, what's the right word? I definitely fell into assuming and, you know, when I used to edit, I used to help the Spanish teacher back in college correct papers. And I was always correcting the paper of a young man named Rodriguez. And I used to remember correcting and thinking, he's supposed to know Spanish. Like, why is this so horrible? And, you know, and then he had the messy writing. And so I would give him a check minus. Well, that Rodriguez is now my husband. And his last name ends with an S. So he's actually Portuguese. So now it's happening to me. I do happen to be Latina. from a father who's Chilean and a mother who's Cuban. But I get you speak Spanish because I don't look Spanish. But then they assume I'm Spanish because my last name is Rodriguez, which if you pronounce it in Portuguese, it's actually Rodrigues. Okay. So I think for me, it's, again, we're going back to assumptions and what we know and generalizing. I'm going to be honest, I don't get offended. I actually take advantage. I've had students come into my office and say, pretend you don't speak English so I can stay with you. And they say it in Spanish. And they say, honey, it's okay. I understand you. She can leave, that kind of thing. So, so I think we're all guilty of it. And I think that we just learn from it, and that was a wonderful experience for me to know. Now I am very aware that if someone's last name ends with an S, that it might be European. It could still be Spanish, but it's better to just ask and find out than assume.
Right. Thank you, Lisette. Thank you for sharing and also for weighing in on this. Anyone else?
So as a white female, I think that with watching the first video, my first response, both as a social worker and a white woman, was no. And I had to kind of, okay, you're learning, be open. And that's been very much part of the process for me over the last couple of years, that, I thought in social work, I had learned it all in social work school. No.
Yep.
So that was my response.
Excellent. Nina?
Just to follow up with from what Lisette, is that how you pronounce your name? Lisette? Yes. It happened to me yesterday, actually. I was at my mother's assisted living facility and someone says, where are you from? And I said, well, I'm from New York. And she says, your English is so good. I thought, well, I was born in Poughkeepsie, New York, and I was raised here in New York. And it reminded me of the years when I was in high school. I was a waitress, at a restaurant, the Hibachi Steak restaurants. This is going back many decades ago. But I remember the clients would be like, oh, your English is so good, and here I am, born in Poughkeepsie, New York, raised in New York. And it's amazing. I mean, and the comment that I got yesterday from someone who actually was a person of color and, and just assuming that I was not from here. It's just interesting because her assumptions and the assumptions of some of the clients that were at the restaurant, the Hibachi Steak restaurant. And it is interesting, because here I am, born and raised in America, yet people still ask me where I'm from.
Right.
And commend me on my English.
Yeah. Thank you, Nina, for sharing that. I can't see both screens, so if there's someone on the other screen or you want to speak, just go ahead and unmute yourself and chime in.
Nina, and everyone, it's Donna. So backing on what Nina just said, of course, I get the same thing as Nina gets, and I've had it all my life. And of course, being younger, I was very sensitive to it, but now I kind of welcome it because it's a teaching moment for that person. Yes, there are Asian Americans that are born and raised in this country that are American citizens and so for me, I actually welcome that now because I feel like I'm maybe unshedding a little bit of that blind spot, even just a little bit. And at times I feel the need to actually speak so they know that I'm not, so they know that I can speak English, as sort of like a teachable moment. So
yes, thanks, Donna. Anyone else before I bring the PowerPoint back up? Effie?
Hi. I get comments too that my English is good enough or it's really great. most of the time they're really welcoming and well-intended. You know, people, I'm used to it now. People cannot pronounce my name, so it has been reduced. So I introduce myself as Dr. K. But in social work, I have to say that it feels quite protected. Outside of social work, things can get more complicated. And as Donna said, like it is a teaching moment, but sometimes it becomes a little tiring, and sometimes it becomes unsafe also. So I think we're all learning to assess the individual situation. And most of the time is well-intended, I find. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Effie. Laura, were you going to say something, or did you accidentally come off mute?
No, I was just acknowledging Effie too. Thank you.
All right, good. All right. So I'm going to bring the PowerPoint back up because it's going to help us to guide and facilitate the rest of our discussion. Let's see. See if I can get it back up. Okay, so it went too far. All right, here we go. Hopefully you all can see this. So I was really interested, and I was torn about showing this clip at this time because I think it's important as social workers. I know we've probably all done it so many times in the last year, in the past 6 weeks or 2 months, to just acknowledge the senseless killings and the targeting of hate crimes against Asian Americans. And so I actually prepared this PowerPoint and this actual pretty close to the same talk in 2015. And given what's happened in society, I thought, is it still okay? But when I looked at the clip again, what stood out for me were the microaggressions. The microaggressions that someone looks at your name and they've decided who you are before you even get there. So I have a personal story about that myself. In one of my marriages, Miguel, don't laugh, I can't see you. I've been married a couple times, Miguel knows it. And in one of my marriages, people came and they admitted to my husband and my face that the reason they came is they wanted to see the Jewish white woman named Rhoda that he was marrying, because my ex-husband was a Black man. So they thought any girl named Rhoda must be Jewish. That can't be a name that belongs to a Black girl. So I thought it was really interesting, but this is the way microaggressions unfold. Most of the time, people are not trying to be offensive. They're just shocked. They have a blind spot and out of their mouth it comes. And I know that for you all, you're probably experiencing it maybe the other way or in other areas of your own jobs or your places that you travel. It's not just the student intern and you who are having these situations. In fact, it's probably more times the student intern is coming to you saying, this person said this and I can't believe it, and how do I respond, etc. But these things happen around physical appearance, age, abilities, language. And a lot of times it's the language, the miscommunication, the intention and perception. You know, as I was reviewing this presentation to prepare for you today, it kept coming to my mind how things that are being done and said today are actually the same things, but just with new labels. And we're going to talk about that a little bit down the road. But before we go forward, I really hope everybody can just exhale and let their shoulders down. We're not going to have a race relations conversation today. We're going to have a social work conversation today. We're all social workers, and that's what we're going to talk about, is how are we going to do social work in the midst of a global and racial pandemic? Because our students deserve no less than the same education. In fact, they probably deserve a little more, because we didn't have all these things to contend with as we came into our social work selves that they are having to contend with. So I think a lot of times we look at this generation, the miscommunication happens. There's very little room for apology, right? You might want to apologize, but already the offense has been done. And so when you probably came out of an era where if you said, I'm sorry, sincerely, it was over. But today what you find is that people hold on longer to that miscommunication or that misintended remark or that misperception. So we're not in Kansas anymore. I have the same sense that Dorothy must have had when she touched down on the yellow brick road, because what does your language indicate? As people were just mentioning, someone says, where are you from? You're not from around here. Well, what is here? What is the here? Is it the United States? Is it this neighborhood? Is it this agency? Is it this block? What do you mean I'm not from around here? Right? And so I think that there, is more of a tendency for people to place claim that this is ours. And so if you're not from around here, how does that work? How does that work for the student intern that comes into an agency who's never worked in an agency before, who's never done this kind of work? What is their struggle to fit in? So, there's office culture and there's school culture. And a lot of times, and with that nice introduction you did for me, Laura, I'm going to add one more thing. I've also served as the co-chair along with my colleague, Dr. Clark, of the EAC, the Educational Advisory Committee. And this committee looks at students. Most of the time we look at students who are having some issues with field. Right. And a lot of times what we find, and I can't see you, Karen, so you can chime in if you want to. What we find is that it's not that the student has done anything that would be considered intrinsically wrong, but they haven't been able to translate being in the office and being in school are two different places, and you have to adjust yourself. Right. So in school, we don't have a lot of, there's not, they don't run around the building screaming, but by the same token, there's not a lot of rules about how to be. When you come into an agency, there are rules about how to be, and most of those rules are unspoken and unwritten, and how you know them is by observing the environment and then learning to do as the Romans do when you are in Rome, for lack of a better term, right? So those two cultures are very different. And a lot of times students are having issues because they have not been able to figure that out. And then where is the bathroom, right? The bathroom can be a place of refuge. And sometimes interns will go into a place and it's like, okay, there's your desk, here's the books, that's where your supervisor's office is. Let us know if you need anything. So this speaks to really building in comfort in the orientation process of when new social work interns come into the agency. Most of you probably, I'm preaching to the choir, you have orientation processes that are comprehensive. But sometimes people don't, depending on what the size and nature of the agency, depending on what's going on in the agency. I cut my social work teeth mostly in child welfare. And there were days when we were just trying to figure out, how to catch the kids that were running around the office, let alone trying to orient an intern, right? If anything, they'd walk in the door and somebody would hand them a kid, hold this baby and sit down right there. We'll get right back with you. So, I don't know, maybe your agencies are way more tame than that, but sometimes that comfort via orientation can be built in. Also, I think we can all remember what it's like to be new. To be a new person again is tough. And so sometimes folks don't transition well. And I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the students may not transition well to like, now I'm new. I was king of the hill at my school, because in some of our programs, you don't start field until your second year. right? And so if by your time you're in your second year, you feel like you got a pretty good lay of the land, well, now we put you into field. And this is something that Laura and I have talked about for those students that start the program and don't start field until the second year, that we might need to reorient them to what it's like to go into a field setting. Because when we talk to them about it a year earlier, well, they've had umpteen classes and now they're not going to remember this. So, you know, it's an elephant in the room when you have a student sitting in front of you and they're not even aware of how their presence is affecting change in the agency for whatever reasons, right? What maybe they haven't adjusted to the office culture, maybe their language is different, maybe they're talking an octave or two a little higher. I could be accused of this. I'm from a family of 6. You want to be heard, you better be loud. Okay, so now it's like, okay, I go somewhere and my kid's like, Mom, you're loud. Oh, okay, all right, so I'll bring it down. But my point becomes, you know, there's cultural sensitivity. And so we have to remember that these differences and similarities exist, and they have an effect on the values, the learning, and the behavior of the intern, right? And many of you have thought of this, but I wonder how many of you think about this feeling of cultural relativism, which is that, you know, foreignness, like I don't feel like I belong here, as opposed to just an acknowledgement of differences that are represented in the environment. I found this quote in one of the references that's on the reference list for this PowerPoint, which I'm very happy to pass along to you all, but I thought it was so interesting. So there was an Israeli and Indian exchange study. And one of the students said, I will never be able to understand the dynamics of this place, at least not in a 1-hour session or in a 3-day encounter or in 3 weeks, even though they speak English. You don't know what insults them, what their gestures mean, what's appropriate and what's not, what's behind the words. So I don't know if this is just me that this was, you know, that was feeling this, or maybe it's some of you. It's difficult to know unless you're keeping up with adolescent youth culture. What did I do wrong? Where did I misstep? How did this relationship just take a turn? And as the field supervisor, you are one of the most important relationships. You will be one of the most memorable people in the social worker's career, right? You all remember your field supervisors. You probably don't remember your professors, and that's okay. I feel like we're very blessed with the group of field supervisors that we have overseeing our students here at Springfield College. So as you look at this word cloud, right, it does date me because word clouds were big then. I was trying to figure one out. This one looked really great. I'm wondering what categories of things you've seen or heard that are not listed here. You've probably seen or heard a lot of this, or if anything that's on this list is resonating with you in terms of students that you may have experienced. I'm going to stop sharing for a second in case someone wants to speak about it. Okay, or any questions thus far? All right, that's the case. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. We are almost done. Okay, so there's probably, let me just say for sure, this is not a complete word cloud of all the differences that you've seen. Maybe there's some differences you've seen that are not even listed here. But I think all of these words describe the variations that you have seen in students. And then I also want to flip it to the variations that students have seen in you. right? Some of these could represent you, right? And sometimes when you have someone sitting across from you who doesn't look like you, what is a good time to initiate that conversation about differences? I know it's not like there's a perfect answer, but does anyone want to chime in of how they have addressed this, how they've met this burden of getting this out of the way, that let's acknowledge that we are different people? Well, I'm going to move on to, sorry.
Rhoda, I could say something. You're sparking.
Go right ahead.
Okay, it's not a response to what you asked directly, but what you said earlier. You have me thinking about how, you know, the language is always evolving and our awareness is always evolving too. Because I was thinking specifically about a former supervisee who identifies as genderqueer and had they them pronouns, and sort of learning about how to negotiate it with an agency that didn't have the same level of awareness, and how for ourselves as supervisors, you know, we need to be aware and informed and continue to be learning, but then thinking about how do we support and work with our students who may have different identities as ourselves, or in terms of every aspect of identity.
No, I appreciate that, Laura. And again, you know, that's something that I even put on this slide, which is you can think of categories that you have seen or heard that are not listed here. Gender identity is one that does come up because it wasn't as big in 2015 when I first created this presentation. So I appreciate you for bringing that up. So speaking of which, I want to talk about field supervision then and field supervision now, right? So there was a melting pot mentality, right? I'm sorry, Dr. Hill, did you want to chime in?
I just want to say, and I think it was stated earlier, was that we're all in process. And something that was helpful for me is that we're all learning, unlearning, and relearning. So I think someone mentioned it earlier. I think it was Tina, you know, who said something to the effect of, you know, that pretty much that this is what I knew then, but how we're growing and developing and that sort of thing. So that was helpful. Learn, relearn, unlearn, and relearn.
That's
and
right.
That we're in process.
That's right. No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Dr. Hill, because that is for all of us that, you know, we have committed to lifelong learning. But, and this might be before some of your time as field supervisors, but I believe some of you here have been supervising long enough that this will resonate with you. There used to be this melting pot mentality that we all are in the melting pot. And so we can all, that's going to guide how we all get along, right? That was the school of thought. That the social worker lens was one that was critically thinking, assessing, and treating. That there was only one expert and one learner in the supervision room, and that the learning that was done by process recording, because process recording was felt to be a solid way to know and identify areas needing to be developed and explored. We also learned by supervision. That learning from the supervisor was invaluable, to watch how the supervisor could come in and decide that we need to talk about something that is processed today or content today, right? Despite what you brought in, the supervisor was assessing and observing the supervisee to know these are things that I need to address. And that we learned by riding with training wheels, right? They gave us little things to do. And then when it looked like we could graduate to the next thing, they gave us another thing to do, but there was a lot more caution. And also speaks to the notion that today's student comes to the placement with more knowledge, experiences and skills than ever before. And that there are older students and younger students. In 2015, the social work context that we were all living within had to do with the fact that lots of things were happening, right? There was the movie theater shooting. There was a community college shooting. There was a shooting at the Planned Parenthood. There was the South Carolina church shooting. Same-sex marriage was approved, right in line with our latest educational policy and accreditation standard, which was also set in 2015. This is when it was decided that supervision should be authentic. It should be transparent and collaborative, right? Just to name a couple things that it should be, that it had not been. It should not be so hierarchical. It should be more of a partnership. It needed to be politically correct. So one of the things that I thought was interesting as I was putting this together was, you know, from 1990 to 2000, there was a journal, and that journal was called the Journal of Multicultural Social Work. But from 2000 to the present, that journal became known as the Journal of Ethnic and Cultural Diversity in Social Work. And so that's why, like, what is politically correct? We're so enamored by chasing political correctness that we're losing the ability to do those things that are important. And so, and when I say we are, I'm saying our profession, social work. Sometimes we jump in the water and it's like, whoa, I didn't know it was that hot, but we're in here now, so we got to just figure it out. And it might not be the right direction for our profession. And then lions and tigers and landmines, because a landmine is easy to avoid, but it's just as easy to step on. And once you've stepped on it, now comes your opportunity to model how to gracefully make a mistake and make an apology. And that's something that our students very much need to see, that it's okay. We don't have to have all the answers. And sometimes we're going to put our foot in our mouths. And when we do, we need to apologize because they're going to do the same thing. So looking at the social work context, you know, I was thinking the social worker is to the field instructor or supervisor as Clark Kent is to Superman. Well, not really. And when I say not really, what I'm saying is you're always the social worker. And that student doesn't have to be Superman all the time. They get to masquerade as themselves, just as a student, right? But you must always be the social worker. And it's like for field supervisors, you're living in the fishbowl because the students are always watching you. And consequently, as part of your job, you're always watching them watch you. So it becomes a very labor intensive, emotionally laborious job. And so again, these are the reasons that we want to recognize and salute you and acknowledge that we know this is a job that is way more than meets the eye. So field supervision now is a salad bowl mentality in that we recognize difference and that difference is what's going to make us rich. That multiple perspectives are valued and acknowledged. We recognize that our students come to the table with valuable experiences by which to enhance the agency and the organization, and that they are able to share that experience because of the relationship, this collaborative supervision that's based on respect, trust, and learning from one another. Both the supervisor and the student is important that they take this informed, not knowing stance. So I know that there's something here I need to know, but I don't really know it all about this thing. So how does this stance serve our purpose as social workers? As social workers, we always want to build a better mousetrap in the form of a social worker who is going to have more courage, and who's going to have more knowledge, and who's going to be more enthusiastic and passionate than maybe we were. So even if they're just skiing on the bunny slopes, you're still letting them ski. And I think that's so much more important than the way we used to have to ride with training wheels, that they are getting to ski key. And then what Dr. Hill and one of the field supervisors who spoke earlier said, we're constantly assessing, tweaking, reassessing. And when I say we, I mean y'all are constantly assessing, tweaking, and reassessing in the agency. We are doing the same thing in our classrooms. We are watching the students, we're asking about field, we're trying to understand how can we augment what you all are doing there? How can we support you and kind of guide them? So this authentic field supervision, culture is a consideration. And so how you address culture is gonna start with the social location of both you and your student upon meeting, right? Because the student's already nervous and I didn't do it. I thought about doing it, coming on here with a mask today so you could see the scary student behind the mask who doesn't know you, doesn't know your heart, doesn't know your passion, and all they see is you in the mask. For many of you, I've seen you in the virtual field visits and you have to still wear a mask because of social distancing and the global pandemic. So masks do just what masks are supposed to do. They hide our full expression. And so you're having to guess what's happening behind your student's mask. They're having to guess what's happening behind yours. So a lot of times we'll have students who have culturally diverse backgrounds, and now they have to cross into an agency environment where they don't know the organizational culture, they don't know you, and they don't know what they're doing a lot of times. Not to say that the students are not smart, but they've never been in this role before. And a lot of times we have to remind them that, you know, they say, well, I'm at this agency and, you know, I'm working for free. Well, no, you're not working for free because you're not qualified to do the job that they're teaching you to do. So you're not working for free, you're learning. And this is some of that tweaking and refining that we do here at the college, right? And then collaborating and modeling this informed not knowing. What does that look like for you sometimes? Because I'm sure as field supervisors, you're sitting in a chair thinking, I've had students before, I know how students are developing, but I'm really not sure what's happening in this interaction right now. So this is really around the issue of this parallel process, in that the way the students discovers their culture and placement with you may be the way they assist clients to discover their cultural selves. So if they don't have this exploration with you, if they don't get to unpack and reflect on who they are as a professional social worker in training, they won't be able to graduate and then have that discussion with clients, because we cannot recreate the real world experience you are giving them in the agency. And so for that reason, the best place for them to practice this discovery of their culture is in placement with you. So I'm going to stop sharing now. I have 2 pages full of resources and references that you might use. I want to just talk today in closing that I hope that this was meaningful. I hope it gave you some food for thought, that it energizes you and re-energizes you, because we need this beautiful energy that you bring to the social work education we're trying to provide at the college. And I hope that it reassures you that we're all, and especially you, are doing your best. So I know that Dr. Hill already gave you one quote, but I want to give you another quote from the closing stanza of Amanda Gorman's poem, The Inaugural Poet Laureate. The new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it. And that came to me because I am a huge fan of Brene Brown. And she talks, she's one of us, and she talks about courage and vulnerability. And I know what kind of courage you are sitting in every day, that you're facing a student you don't know, and that you are willing to be vulnerable under that circumstance for a whole academic year. And so I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you. If you have questions or discussion, I think we have maybe 5 minutes left, Laura.
Yeah, 5 or 10 minutes is great.
I'd like to just thank you so much for this, because this is very relevant, especially in this last semester of internships. I had a student who identified as Latina, but she looked white and her name was white, right? So she was in a school setting where most of the students are Black and brown students, and she was having a hard time identifying that they saw her differently than she identified. So we really had to work through that, and it was a challenge. I guess I wish I would have heard you speak before I supervised her. But I think we did good. She was actually not from Springfield College. She was from Smith College, because I also supervised students from there. But that was very interesting. Thank you very much. I got a lot out of that.
Still trying to figure out how to get off mute. I'm glad you said that, Zeta, because I want to say, and just to remind you all, I'm sure you all know, that we are also here as a resource for you, because we know who the students are we're sending to you, right? And we are like banking on you, like this is a great supervisor, this will be great for our student. And sometimes it just gets tough. We all are just coming out of a global pandemic. So please do feel free to reach in and lean on us at any time.
One of the things I forgot to mention, but Rhoda and I had talked about in preparation for today's event, was not only that the subject was, relevant as always, but increasingly relevant in this year, but also in moving forward. The Council for Social Work Education is going to be releasing new guidelines for the educational policy standards. And one thing I'm personally pretty excited about is anti-racism and anti-oppressive practices are going to be woven in much more explicitly into the core competencies and the standards that we have to meet throughout our program and within field education as well. So we're looking forward to continued conversation about how do we continue to elevate that in our work and our practice, and how it translates into the field as well.
And lastly, I don't know if I'm stealing the thunder of Laura or Dr. Hill, but you will be receiving with your CEU certificate a special gift from us, since we couldn't buy you breakfast today. And hopefully it's something that you will all enjoy and have a chance to relax with over the summer. Dr. Hill.
Yes, I'm like you, Rhoda. I couldn't find the mute button. I know we've all been there, done that. Yes, Rhoda in her talk utilized this book, and I brought it home, Rhoda, so I don't have it with me, but I would have showed it. I'm sure Laura may have it so you can show it. But we want to thank you, supervisors, for your service, your commitment to the social work profession, to your agencies, and more importantly for us, to our students, and just really training the next generation of social workers. So we absolutely want to thank you for your time, and thank you for just your commitment. Again, we know we're not paying you big bucks, but it really, we know it's coming from your heart. So again, a heartfelt thank you. Thank you, Dr. Smith, for raising such good food for thought and really speaking to the importance of us to really be inclusive. That, you know, many times as social workers, I like what you said about lifelong learning, that we think we have it all, but there's always some more to learn. So I want to thank you for your very, very inspirational and thought-provoking talk. And I'm glad it wasn't about issues of race, but really focusing on social workers. So thank you, Dr. Smith. Job well done. Ms. Mackey, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hill. There is not a code associated. There may be a prompt for one, but the fact that you're getting the link and you're completing the evaluation and the forms automatically means we'll recognize and honor the CEUs for you. And I just, you know, again, I'm flooded a little bit by gratitude, appreciation, Dr. Hill. Even, you know, when you spoke in the beginning, I almost felt moved to tears by everything that you said. And then hearing the Supervisors of the Year speaking, I also was like really overwhelmed and just humbled and appreciative of thinking about the ripple effect of the work that you do, how many generations of social workers and clients are going to be positively affected for the years to come. And, you know, how honorable it is to take on the work that you do when it's not required of you. And yet what a huge service it is. So it is absolutely wonderful to be able to take a moment to acknowledge you and appreciate you. And, you know, we're excited to continue working with you moving forward. And so thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. And we wish everybody a wonderful summer.